I've just put together a few sort of rambly things, which will give you my perspective. I mean, what I wanted today was total democracy. Some of you know I'm a total freak for that. So I wanted 3 different, very, very different views of what we're doing and why, and then we can all discuss where this is going and where we want to take it. That's my view. For time reasons, I've reduced this. This has been on my mind all week as I was thinking about this meeting. It's by the old poet laureate Rudyard Kipling. I can't stand if I'm completely honest. I think it's jingoistic, imperialist tripe. Apart from 1 or 2 of the immortal lines. Listen to this verse. If you can dream and not make dreams your master, if you can think and not make thoughts your aim, if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those 2 impostors just the same, if you can bear to hear the truth you've spoken, twisted by knaves to make a trap for fools, or watch the things you gave your life to broken, and stoop and build them up with worn out tools. That rather strikes me as what we're trying to do. So I've got a few thoughts and nothing else. My personal reflections, my thoughts completely disagree. You've got your own thoughts, you've got your own intuitions, but let's have a good chat. I share actually a lot more in common with Tom than people suspect. I also intuit that we're at something of a cultural crossroads at the moment. And that we need really to find a way to successfully navigate where we've come from to where we're going to. I was saying to Irina a minute ago, one of the things that worries me about a country where debate has always been natural and endemic is now debate is feared. I mean, this is monstrous, and we've got to be very, very careful of where that's going. Who benefits from the lack of open debate? All the people we don't want to benefit. Please be careful. Meaning, to my mind, this is a time for spiritual recovery, along with a new sense of maturity, whether we like it or not. Sometimes greatness is thrust upon you. Sometimes the gift is given you, whether you feel ready to have it or not. After all, this is an age when we need to reclaim our own disappearing heritage and stand our ground. Tradition, that word is thrown at me week in and week out. So let me tell you what I mean. And it will be in one of my new books. No prompting. Eventually. I'm saving that one. Tradition for me isn't really a sequence of events in time. I mean, I've had a ruck recently with the Traditional Britain group. As most of you know, it's been quite loud. I mean, which bit of traditional Britain do you want? Do you want the sort of Anglican 50s? Well, no, I don't want that. I want the bit that's Roman Catholic before that. No, I don't. I want the pagan bit before that. So, if that's tradition, forget it. If it's arbitrary points in time, forget it. If it's something eternal, if that doesn't mix too many metaphors, if it's something above us all, a measure, a system of measuring, evaluating, sustaining, walking towards, if it's something much more ethereal, abstract, but at the same time 100% more concrete, because it dominates our lives, then tradition becomes everything. Not simply a series of facts and dates that I might disagree with you about anyway. This age, it is an era during which each one of us must recall the ancient clan bonds, I suspect, that were seen as simply realities, remember how these things were viewed. Blood, that's come up today. Yeah, that was one of the clan bonds, but so is my bond with earth, with air, with fire, with water, with ice. They were clan bonds. Who were my ancestors? My grandfathers, my forebears, and the gods. Therefore, already you're looking at something more extreme, more beautiful, and more telling than most moderns would have us believe. Nothing less, I suspect, than the full remembrance of these facts of our past will actually begin to lead us out of our present problems. I'm going to do this differently. There's a lot of talk about Vanatru nowadays. That is one way of looking at the past, and I completely agree with Reichardt and I completely agree with Tom. These are modern terms for a modern age. Our ancestors simply would not have thought in this way. But we are not them, we are here and now. As one of the caps I wear is heathen and self-professed and very proud of that, I would claim to be Vanatru, not Vanatru. I find the whole sort of combative nature of Vanatru, the need to claim a battlefield and win a battle, a fight outright, I find that as somehow going in circles. The Vanir strike me as much more impressive and inspiring, and maybe that's really where the whole of paganism actually meets. A reverence for the forces of nature, the substance of life, the substances of life, the energies, the magnetisms. Isn't that really what we're all talking about with different vocabularies? I would claim yes. This by no way implies disrespect to Vanatru or the types of ancestors, which are actually quite minimal, that they worship. I suspect, however, it is too narrow. Don't misunderstand my position. I certainly believe that some of the values they're talking about, faith, community, folk, these are valuable things. So please don't misunderstand that. And they certainly help share where I'm coming from and going to. And let me say, I became a professed heathen with the Odinist Fellowship. Ralph, Annie and Briggs were the priests that gave me that great blessing. Although, of course, I'm also a Wiccan of a Norse variety, whether our friends realise it or not. I don't think they like the Norse bit, but there we are. I'm absolutely certain they don't, but there we are. So what am I talking about, I suppose? I'm looking for common ground as usual. I'm looking for that modicum of inner balance, that sense of orientation that something like heathenry in potential can give. Something that Freya used to talk to me about, Freya Aswin, who of course ordained me as a priest of the goddess Nerthus. So again, I'm looking for contraries. I'm trying to get lots of different things together. My one sadness in modern heathenry is that Vanatru is so seldom given a voice and is far too often shouted down as yet another unnecessary division in our already splintered ranks. Oh, let's have more divisions and more conversation. If ever there was a false claim to unity, that's really it. And again, don't get me wrong, unreservedly my experience affirms that no serious heathen will ever deny the truth of the empirical world around them, still less reject the obvious frames of joyous physical reference. In itself, heathenry starts from immediate experience and then proceeds by quite justifiable steps to metaphysical claims. Natural theology, Richard and I suspect, have both suffered from classes in that in various ways, is actually of heathen origin. It's of pagan origin. It's not a Christian idea. That we argue to the eternal from the natural and the temporal. I think that is heathen theology at its best, pagan theology at its best, and it needs to come back. And the Christians actually have stolen our thunder and said, oh, it's nothing to do with you because you end up with Christ. Whoa! It came from us, and you may not end up there at all. Perhaps you'll end up somewhere else. Still, even with this discourse agreed, it is we Vanatru who insist on being counted among the advocates of eco-spirituality and deep ecology. I don't have the problems that the Asatrua do, that constantly talking about people that lived hundreds of years ago. Yeah, just like whatever. We tend to see ourselves as friends of the new sciences. We tend to feel ourselves very much in the picture. We don't feel disadvantaged by archaisms. Why should we? We're all living on the earth now, and the earth as an organism and the energies of the earth. Why would we feel at a loss? A few of us even propose a qualitative understanding of quantum mechanics, plasma flows, along with the history of our evolving universe, as quintessential guides for effective functioning as a species, therefore religious guides, of course. Akin then to our Viking ancestors. Oh, I'm so sick of conversations about Vikings. Let's look at the Vikings. They were all thinking about the future, not the past. They had serious socio-economic problems, which is why all the invasions took place. They weren't just a group of fat malcontents wondering how to create nausea across Europe. They had their mind on better lives in a future world. That's what they were doing, and that's what they were about, despite what the church said about them. And the church should have known better. Akin then to our Viking ancestors, we Asatrua do not wish to live in the past or embrace any type of lurid decadence, as some of our American heathen brothers most certainly want to do, but prefer to search for bigger and brighter tomorrows. Standing fast by such spiritual assertions, we occasionally find ourselves allied to previously unsuspected colleagues. Not sure Tom will like this, but like the Roman Catholic theologian Thomas Berry. If ever there was a closet pagan, it's Thomas Berry. Have you heard that phrase, they're anonymous Christians? That came from the Second Vatican Council. Okay, I think they're anonymous pagans. Okay, and Thomas Berry was one of them. The father of the spirituality of eco-science. It comes from him directly. Considered to be a leader of the school initiated by the remarkable Teilhard de Chardin, relying completely on natural research and science. He ends up with a pagan pantheist view to my mind. Both of whom respected the universe as the only self-referential reality in the phenomenal world, indeed almost mouthing the words of an Asatrua priest. Father Teilhard states, and here I quote, "It is the only text without context. Everything else has to be seen in the context of the universe." Vanatru. 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 That is Vanatru. Although we Vanatru would add to his statement that each of us, as devotees of great nature, is awake to the significance of our universe understood as sacred story, and that story is ongoing. Why are the Eddas finished? We're not looking at a series of canonical books that may or may not fit into the Bible. Why is the Edda finished? It's not. It's being written here now by us in this room. This is a new chapter of the Edda. Put differently, to the teleological arguments of natural theology, assuredly we Vanatrua perceive the universe as language and song. Those themes run throughout the Old Norse texts, and they were seen as natural. Language and song. Much more is spoken about them than blood. Much more. I think those realities are interesting. We ground ourselves with the physical, whatever that means, with the material, with the earth, of course. But what's more material and earthy than language and song, if you really begin to think about it? Abstract sometimes are not as abstract as we think. They dominate lives and cultures. Assuredly, we Vanatru perceive the universe as language and song in a fashion, I would say, similar to dolphins, bumblebees and birds. We attempt to interact with creation as do the trees around us. Clearly and without the slightest question, the story of the universe can be read with and through the trees. Everything tells the story of the universe, and the Vanir are the authors of that story. They're not some isolated god of meditation that sits above time and space wondering how it will all work out, but hang on, I thought he knew. You know, the Vanir are creators. They create now, this minute, not way back when, and they're creating our bond and our fellowship as we all sit here. This is why we Vanatru are mindful that the winds also tell their own unique tale, literally as well as imaginatively. We Vanatru are alert to evidence suggesting this narrative has its imprint everywhere as a cult drama, one of the things that you all know that fascinates me. Beyond contention, this is why it's so important to know the cultural stories of enlightened faith, tribal origins, and one's own essential journey. Certainly, without these stories, no one achieves adulthood. That bloody poem, If. It's all about becoming an adult man. How many people really become adults? How many people actually become mature? It strikes me that this culture, modern day London, which I loathe with a vengeance, is all about immaturity. Do you know, oh my God, I'm going to get some gear for the weekend and get wrecked. Oh, so that's your life. Good for you. And I'm not a Puritan. Why not sometimes? But don't make it a lifestyle. Why not sometimes? Don't make it a lifestyle. That's why I suspect Jean will love this bit. That the Vanatru are true Wicca. Let's not throw out the baby with the bathwater. Uncle Gerald, as wonderful as he was, is only one of the voices of that tradition. Auntie Doreen has a very different voice to his. And Raymond Buckland, who of course started Sayak's Northern Wicca, or at least drew on that, is a different voice again. Let's not separate ourselves by false divisions and labels that actually mean exactly the same thing if you look at them from a different angle. We've got to be really careful of that. We Vanatru strive for knowledge in every sphere as an act of worship. Every single fact that's discovered for us is a new statement about the gods, the nature spirits. We are not afraid of science at all. This is why our Lord is Frey, and our Lady is Freya. The Lord and the Lady, oh my God, we're already on Wiccan territory then. Only we did it first. We use power and insight in our meditations as prayers. Nature is our scripture, and the book of nature is constantly unfolding for anyone who really wants to understand divinity. That is our view. I'm going to throw something a little more technical on it. Shout at me, I don't care. Let me stress, maybe a little presumptuously, all of this refers to the world of phenomena and not the world of spirit, energy, consciousness. Everything phenomenal, after all, can be described and therefore studied. That is what we do. We describe. Our descriptions are study. But the noumenon, the gods in themselves, elude all of it. Accordingly, there is an irony in any attempt to discuss nature spirits, which I'm doing, of course, which in itself must always be seen as versification. It's poetry. What's wrong with poetry? But it's poetry. Undoubtedly, this noted, the spirits are here and on the other side equally. That was the ultimate Vanatru insight. They're here in the earth, in the earthquakes, in the water, in the ice, but they're also somewhere else. Oh, by the gods, then so are we. We're here in the flesh and the bone and the sinew and the muscle, but we're also somewhere else. And that's where all this theology comes alive. And which is why statements about the blood are really not so worrying and actually vital if we're going to find out where we're going with all this. To the inquiry, therefore, where is spirit, we must reply that such a question incorporates a false assumption. It implies that spirit is derivative. In other words, it is not in itself ultimate. The gods are the gods. They're not bits of something. Our opponents, Christian or otherwise, refuse to admit that they constantly make this epistemological category. What they do is they mistake, forgive me for getting technical for a minute, epistemological categories for ontological categories. They mistake questions about inquiry for questions about being. And that's been the problem within Christianity for 2,000 years. You can't get the same thing. They're different levels in the box of chocolates. You can't do the two. And they want their cake and to eat it. What exists independently of our senses and our categories cannot be described and conceptualized in itself. And human beings, without the insights provided by ritual, elemental meditation, or magical prayer, simply cannot help constructing categories that are anything other than epistemological. Why is prayer so important? Why is meditation so important? Why is religion so important? Because they're modalities of understanding. They're not just words. If I'm mumbling prayers half through the night, I'm doing more than just using vocabulary. The old ascetics worked that out. If I'm taking icy cold baths or roasting under the sun, a whole new modality of understanding is opening. Religion is the term that covers all of those practices. If it's not that, it's nothing. If it is that, it's everything. Be careful. Sometimes we throw out the baby with the bathwater. On top of this, the vast majority of people assume that things are the way they perceive them to be. Some of my more radical friends on the right are talking about naive realism. Hey, it's called naive for a reason, right? It doesn't work. Oh, what is it? All these quantum physicists turned up and destroyed it. Then Wittgenstein came along to destroy what was left. Your senses are telling you something about something you will never be able to understand. So again, we're getting back to the realm of the gods. And what's the real way of getting back there? Meditation, prayer, and all of the things that are increasingly out of fashion outside the New Age, which is why I rather like the New Age. They're saying, hang on, something really important is happening here. Not every group is doing that. The world that appears to our senses is only a facet of a wider reality and has no true being in itself, but only a ceaseless becoming. Every minute it's new, every minute it's different, every minute it's something other. It is a succession of shadows and waves, the passing of a dream, and a beautiful religious mystery. And that mystery points beyond itself to somewhere else. To my mind, nature spirits are the very substances of life from which all energy, all atoms, everything macro and micro derives. The particles and processes of life. Also, spirit is that which moves. Remember, we're using poetry. I'm not giving a description. Spirit is also that which moves around them, supplying the healing bounds of existence. People go mad if they don't have boundaries. Isn't that interesting? Oh, let's destroy everything. Let's remove boundaries. Whoa, then we're leading to madness. Assuredly, each heathen group accepts the world is suffused with a divine energy or series of beatific forces, which may be collaborated with to achieve deliverance, no matter how we see that. But this isn't a trivial or unimportant series of observations. It is what we're trying to resurrect here today and forge in a new way. I'm cutting this out because I'm going far too long. Let me round off by saying a few things. sometimes we must look back as a people if we're successfully to expand and stride into the future. That's why I'm not even against the archaisms of Asatru. As I say, Viking conversations really get up my nose, but right, if it's helping some people make connections with these things, why not? Why not? Yet, unlike those who follow the way of the Aesir, I suspect the Vanatru road less travelled is nowadays becoming an extremely busy motorway. The very discourse narrated by the natural sciences, traditional ethical structures, along with computer models pursued by mathematicians in their continuing search for the golden mean, are beginning to sound more and more like the collective discussions of a college of Asatru priests. It's us that are doing it. We're talking about the same things in slightly different ways. Not simply the... What is Asatru? I mean, this is the one thing that really annoys me in heathenry. Oh, that's a religion of farmers. Hey, we've all got to eat. You know, you talk about whatever you want to. The great Hengist, the axe slinger, bloody-nosed, the now long dead. Yeah, they had to eat as well. I like religions of farmers. You know, I like eating well, as you probably noticed. And the religion of farmers is now called the eco-sciences. And it's called things like how we keep our world sustainable and earth care. So be careful when we're when Asatru insults are being thrown around. All of which explains the noticeable discomfort of churchmen and Asatru, I expect, when natural theology raises its very beautiful head. Joy is found in worship amongst nature, and the deep love of the ecosystem, that mother of mothers, is finally shared openly and commonly. I've noticed one thing, as you know, I've got links with Parliament. The two things they don't like, idealism and ecology, I think that's incredibly interesting. Let me finish there, my dears. Asatru rules, everyone else is wrong. Any questions, please ask me now. You can clap, I give you permission.